Thank you very much. And thank you. The crew here has been really amazing and actually accommodated us at like very last minute. So kudos and props to them. All right. So now that we've gotten our slides all up to date, this is going to be a session and then a discussion. So hope you enjoy. By the way, you can get the slides if you go to bit.ly/goldfu2016. All right, Laurie, you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, so let's start by introducing ourselves, if you don't already know who we are. So my name is Lauri Escola. You can find me from Drupal.org with the username Lauri with 3 I's. It's not variable, it's always the same. I'm a Drupal 8 theme system co-maintainer with Scott, and I work for a Finnish Drupal agency called Druid as a Drupal developer.
Yeah, sure. Oh. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Scott Reeves, also known as Kotzer on Drupal.org and Twitter and lots of places. As Laurie mentioned, I'm also a Drupal 8 theme system co-maintainer. I maintain the stable base theme that's in Drupal 8. You may have heard him from Morten yesterday. And more recently, I'm also a provisional D8 core committer, so focusing on front end and theming, so I can actually push the buttons that make people's work get into core, and it's really fun. And then I'm also, my day job is I'm a team lead at Digital Echidna. We're a Drupal shop in London, Canada. Yes, there is a London in Canada. So let's first talk and let's get some basic concepts established first. So CMS, Content Management System. Wikipedia says that a CMS is a computer application that supports the creation and modification of digital content using a common UI and usually supports multiple users working in a collaborative environment. So sounds a little bit like Drupal. And another really interesting quote that we found when we were researching is that on Wikipedia it says that content management systems, by their very nature, support the separation of content and presentation, and that'll become important later for our discussion, I think. So, and just a few example CMSs, especially in the PHP and open source world: WordPress, Joomla, of course, Drupal. So, can we get a show of hands? How many people here regularly work with CMSs? So, like, basically everyone. Cool. And how many people work with Drupal regularly? Okay, cool. So pretty much we're all like Drupal people. I just wanted to make sure. And by the way, if you're not a Drupal person, like hopefully that we can make this make sense for you. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's start with what is theme system then. Let's proceed into the topic of this presentation. So theme system is system that is it's a subsystem part of Drupal, and it allows flexible markup output from different incomes. So let's say markup can come from different sources. It can come from a module, it can come from a theme. In other systems other than Drupal, it might come from a plugin or even from a different kind of component, a library. But in Drupal, they come basically from module or a theme. And that's what makes theme systems complicated, because there is different kind of users that we have to build this system for. Modules have quite a lot of authority also for the theme system. They can provide markup overrides for cases like contextual links. Here's a screenshot of a contextual links if you don't know what they are. And so all of the markup related to contextual links comes from a module. It doesn't come from a theme. So a module could also be a markup generator. Themes are also quite complicated because themes can be generic, such as Zen. They can be also very application specific, like the themes that we built for clients. But they can also have inheritance, so they are loaded in a tree structure, so you can have multiple levels of themes that all serve different purpose. Good example of a very different kind of theme, again, is a stable theme in Drupal core, which only serves the purpose of backwards compatibility. And even aside, one application could run using multiple teams. And in a very, very basic site, I would say you run at least 2 different teams. You use 7 as an admin team, and you use some other team to run the user-facing side of the CMS. You could have even more complex rules than this.
And we'll just touch briefly on the topic of frameworks, because it kind of comes up more and more, especially now that Drupal 8 has integrated Symfony components into it. So we've kind of had more interactions with that community. In general, frameworks have a lower complexity. Like they have little to no theme system generally. Like usually you are responsible for getting things, into HTML and out to your users. You need to write code usually for doing a lot of things. So you're not usually, in a framework, you're not usually installing someone else's code, like for example, a module, and then like turning it on and like clicking things. It's usually, you're writing code, or maybe you're integrating someone else's code, but you kind of usually need to write some sort of glue code to integrate that. So getting back to the topic of Symfony, like there's some interesting conversations a while back where, we were kind of hearing rumblings from the Symfony community that like they think that Drupal 8 is using Symfony wrong, kind of thing. But personally, anyway, I don't think that's a fair comparison because it's a very different system. We're using Twig in a CMS context, so anytime you're using a tool, if the context changes, then the usage may also need to change, and I think that's the case for Drupal 8. Like we really have to account for site builders and content editors and things like that a lot more than someone building more of a web app. The other thing that's kind of different is that CMS often comes with like preset templates, preset styling, like Drupal, for example, and then you're kind of building on top of that, whether it's the stable theme or whether it's some other base theme. You're not really starting from nothing ever. So yeah, we just think that it's, in terms of this discussion that we're having today, we may be able to get some lessons from frameworks, but in general, it doesn't make too much sense to compare them too directly to CMSs.
Yeah, so what are the personas that we face when we are building a theme system for a CMS? So these are the different developer personas that we face. We don't have any users other than developers that we have thought of. Sometimes accommodating these different personas can be very, very difficult because the needs that they have can be very, very, very different. So they kind of clash each other. And also allowing the both ways UI and code can be also very, very difficult. It makes extra level of complexity. Certain decisions usually are made so that some of these personas have been prioritized differently. We are going to demonstrate that a little bit later on. Always that is not very explicit decision that is being made, but it's still being prioritized by someone at some situation. So the most obvious persona that we have is a teamer / front-end developer. And teamer in a context of Drupal has a very different meaning that it has in outside of Drupal. Like I would say in general, it's a designer outside of Drupal almost maybe. But in Drupal, if you are a teamer, you also have to know PHP. At least if you're using Drupal 7 or an older version of that. Because of a lot of markup was coming from theme functions that was fully PHP, and designers couldn't handle that. That's definitely something that scares the hell out of designers. The other important user persona that we have is backend developers. They interact with the same theme system as the front-end developers, and sometimes even in ways that are bad for the teamers. For example, they can override templates, so they can override markup that is supposed to be managed by the team. Sometimes even a module, the backend developer in there might override these. Also, the backend developers are users of the theme system in a sense that they are putting the data in a more traditional kind of a theme system into the theme system. They give the data for the templates, call them out somewhere. And there's also, of course, the site builder, who is also user of a theme system. Let's say in Drupal, the site builder might be using theme system in when they're changing theme settings, when they are setting a logo on the page, or when they're using views. They might be setting classes for their markup or changing the elements that are output in the markup. And also these create some extra complexity that we have in the system.
Right, so expanding on this topic of personas, we looked at some other projects and just to see, like open source projects, to see what they've established as personas, and we found that Mozilla was kind of stood out. They have personas that are documented, they have actual names and descriptions of like what these people would do. I assume they're made up people, but maybe they're real people, who knows? We didn't dig that deep. So they have, for example, they have George, a designer. They have Denise, who's a lightweight JavaScripter. They have Emily, who's a corporate web app developer. And they have Alexander, who's a Firefox add-on developer. And this one kind of stood out to us as well because it seemed like it's almost comparable to what we would call a module developer. And even just the idea of splitting out module developer from a general backend developer could inform some decisions in a slightly different way. So Laurie mentioned about priorities, and different content management systems prioritize these types of personas, or perhaps they're more detailed personas in different ways. We kind of tried to come up with a rough metric. It's just kind of our impressions. So we looked at how flexible is the theme system, how usable is the theme system, kind of the general, like how clean is it? Is it kind of tangled up with the backend?
The idea is just to simply demonstrate the fact that this kind of prioritization can be done, that it's not all with the same priority.
Yeah, like not every CMS has the same theming experience as the other ones. And as Laurie mentioned, like often this prioritization is not necessarily like explicitly done. Sometimes whoever is driving a certain change, like let's say, someone is wanting to rework the form system or something, like, so maybe it's driven by backend developers. That might often be the types of the persona that's actually driving that. And they can often put themselves kind of as the top priority, which obviously can be bad. So yeah, we looked at some other CMSs. This is the most impressive slide, I think. It's a little bit hard to see, but Laurie actually rebuilt Bartik, or most of Bartik, in WordPress. If you look carefully at the top, that's the WordPress admin bar. So yeah, that's just kind of the warm-up for this next little segment. And what we're about to do is really not scientific. I'd be happy to hear other opinions from maybe people who are more familiar with these CMSs than we are.
Also, the idea is not to tell that other CMS is better than another. It's just simply...
Yeah, it's just something that we wanted to explore. So in Drupal, we have like a mission statement, but we don't really have personas. I think at least the both of us would like to see, what we could do if we had more fine-grained personas, more detailed personas, and a little bit more, just more personas in general, so we can see more about how people are using Drupal. Because I think one thing that I've learned as being a core developer is that it's really hard unless you can get a lot of opinions from people, which is really hard. There's a lot of hypotheticals and like, what would this type of user want? And it's very difficult. So personas would at least give you kind of a tool to think about some of these things.
Also, when we were discussing adding stable theme last fall in DrupalCon Barcelona, we created a pretty well-defined user personas for the teams in Drupal core.
Yeah, and those were actually based on real people in the Drupal community, so it made it kind of also fun but easy to kind of think about in your head. So in the end, this kind of prioritization is really difficult. And one of the questions that we kind of want to put out is is it even possible to make all these people happy in a system like Drupal? Or is it just bound to be like a three-way tug of war where everyone wants, the best thing and the most flexibility and the most power? If anyone saw the Dries note from New Orleans a couple weeks ago, we came up with this prioritization beforehand, but this actually pretty much matches up with what he presented. And I'm not saying like, we predicted the future, but it seems like we're kind of already going in the direction that the project lead wants to go, which is just sort of interesting. So and potentially worrying, because if, I assume a lot of people in here are themers. So if you find yourself at the bottom of the list and there's no light at the tunnel of that changing, can be very difficult to keep working with it and to keep kind of positive, keep hope. Basically, I don't want to, make it too sad, but it's true, I think. So, getting into more specifics about Drupal, the template often prints everything defined from the UI in a very generic way. So, like, in your node template, you have a content variable. Like, what the hell does that mean? It's content. So, a lot of the time what you'll do is you'll split up that content and say, I'm going to print this field here and this field here. But if you're not careful, when you change things like that too much, it's really easy to break the UI, and then you're stealing the power away from the site builder. The backend developer also has a lot of power to step in and change things. Like, they can mess around with that content variable as much as they want. And you have very little say over whether they can actually do that or not. So we also looked at WordPress. This was more Lowry, so feel free to jump in here. But we couldn't really find defined personas for WordPress. If they have them, that would be great to know. We found that, from our standpoint anyway, and we're obviously biased working in Drupal, but the theming is kind of not as usable, we found, but is very, very flexible. So the site builder also can do a lot from the UI, but yeah, it's in general, like, WordPress is actually targeted more at themers, less so at like the site builders and the backend developers. That's our opinion anyway after looking at it. And Joomla actually does have some rough personas, so that was interesting and kind of nice to see. And kind of similar to Drupal in a way, because it has quite a powerful UI, which in some ways works similarly to Drupal, except some of the names are different. Like, they call their blocks modules, which is super confusing. But yeah, you can actually like manipulate the classes that go into a block/module from the UI. So it's, again, you have a lot of power from the UI. But it's pretty similar. So they also hardcode things in templates more often than Drupal does, so you can kind of see more easily what you're working with as a themer. So it gives more power to the themers, like, versus the back-end developer being able to manipulate that stuff all the way through. And we also checked out Concrete 5, which is not one that I hear about too often, but it's definitely a big one. It also has quite a powerful UI, has many APIs, helpers that would make a back-end developer feel right at home. Theming experience in some ways looks pretty similar to Drupal. Like, we landed on the same order of prioritization as Drupal for this one, and we're not sure if that means we should be looking closer at Concrete 5 to see if we can learn anything, apply anything to Drupal, see if they're doing anything cool. Or maybe we should say, no, like, they're too similar. We should be looking at things that are radically different and seeing what new ideas we can bring in.
But interesting point of the personas was that the WordPress has completely different prioritization as Drupal, and that is the system that we compare ourselves most often. And one important thing about the prioritization is that WordPress has made a lot of decisions that they remove a lot of power from the site builder and give that power to Themer, which means that they have simply just hard-coded things in the template, which we don't do that much in Drupal at all. So it's very different kind of mindset that they have over there. Yeah. So let's talk about the current situation that we have in Drupal. I'm going to explain some of the problems that we face, and maybe you get a better idea, like, what does it actually mean that things are being prioritized. So a few of the problems before the clash of the problems. So these are the problems that we face on the theme system on top of the different personas. And these are the things that we have to deal with all the time when we are building something. So the first problem that we have, first complex thing that we have is security. So basically, theme system is responsible of outputting the markup for the browser. And 50% of the time you install security updates on your Drupal site, it is because of simple XSS hole on the module or Drupal core. So a lot of the security can be managed by theme system if we do a change. And we did a change in Drupal 8. We added auto escape, which is a not that complex system after all, but it was very, very complex change that we had to go through. And the problem that we have is because there is user-generated content on the UI, there's also content that is from more elevated users, like admins, so that we should be able to trust that. And there's also strings and data coming from PHP variables. And we have to all the time know where each of the strings are coming, what is the original location of that string. Like, wherever that string is being put, we need to know where did it come from in order to be able to know what should be done for that string automatically. In Drupal, we created objects out of them, and now it's very simple to know where they are coming from. But of course, that required a lot of different changes because strings are converted into objects, and PHP to string doesn't work as predictably as you would assume. Other problems that we have is backwards compatibility. Of course, BC is not difficult if you don't want to change, but if you want to evolve, then BC can be very, very complicated. And we have stable team in Drupal core for this, and it just adds another layer of complexity, and it's a very, very hacky way to do this. And the problem is that basically if anything changes in the markup, there's a very, very high chance that someone's site will break because of the change. So basically we have to be able to evolve without changing anything on the existing sites, which is not that easy. Also, the UI/code mismatch is something that we face a lot, which is that basically because Teamer is the last one to touch something before it goes to the browser, they can do whatever in the template that they want. So they can basically just choose to not print something in the template, and that breaks the UI. And that's also one of the complex problems, like how can we make it flexible in the template without making the themers break the UI. So all of these related problems make theme system complex and very hard to evolve. Like before Drupal 8 release, we were fixing some of the bugs in the theme system, and I think all of the bug fixes we did actually broke someone's module, because all of the modules have very high expectations in the way the theme system works. And for that reason, it's very hard to evolve the theme system itself. So let's go through some of the examples that we have, a few practical examples from Drupal core. So the first one is a very, very simple, or supposed to be simple, feature that we have in Drupal core, logo. So how logo works in Drupal core is that on the theme settings, you can upload an image. After that, you have to place a block for a region that you have created into your theme. And at this point, your logo might not be even translatable or localizable. So we don't even have all the possible features that people need. And this is already a pretty complex feature that we have in the Drupal core. There is quite a lot of code related to the logo itself. So let's say WordPress, on the other hand, has decided, OK, we don't give a ability for the site builder to change the logo. You have to hard code it into the template. So all of these different things is like immediately available for the teamer. They can translate it, they can localize it, and there's no complex feature for the site builder that needs to be built. So this is a good example that different system has taken a different approach for fixing this kind of problem. And in Drupal, I don't think we can get rid of the logo on the UI because we want site builders to be able to change the logo. But this is a good example that if we would prioritize differently, we might be able to create this feature more easily. Then moving to a more complex use case, form API. Forms in Drupal are actually pretty good for the backend developers. I don't think the backend developers are fully happy also, but they're very good for the backend developers and the site builders compared to what they are for the themers. I think forms is one of the things that makes themers cry while they're using Drupal, because the themers basically have no authority over the forms at all. The WoW form API is fully on the backend side of Drupal, even though we are outputting markup. Forms are what they essentially are. After all, they are just markup. So forms were one of the early attempts to build a component system in Drupal core. But because it was driven by the backend developers, probably for that reason, it was something that mainly lives on the backend side. And again, this is a feature that has a very different kind of approach from different systems. Like we were looking at Joomla, which hard codes all the form markup into the templates. And then there's Concrete 5, which has like a form builder PHP class, which still where you have still authority in your team. So you could modify your form markup in your team if you want to. So there's different kind of approaches for forms, and there's different kind of prioritization that the other systems has made. In Drupal, the prioritization has been this.
So what can we do about this? One potential solution that's been brought up is a component-based theme system. So to give you a bit more context to this discussion, because there's a very long issue on Drupal.org, you can read about this. But really, to kind of skip to the point, like we're hoping that we can actually have some sort of a discussion about this tomorrow at the code sprints, or at the sprints. So as I said, this is one possible sort of, at least a way to help improve this situation. So we'll kind of talk a little bit about this. A group of people got together earlier this month at DrupalCon New Orleans as well to discuss this idea and use kind of whiteboards and stuff like that and think about it. So there was a lot of kind of wish list items in that meeting. We tried to really boil it down to the essentials here and what do we really need, especially for themers. What do themers really want out of a component-based theme system? So the first, this is the key point right here. So, components should not be the same as your data structures. They can't be the same. But this is the way it's been in Drupal for so long. Drupal has templates for nodes. It has for fields, for users. These are all data. These are all basically they're almost like your models coming right from the database. And we just basically decorate them and we wrap them with theming. So it's very, very tied together, very coupled. This means that oftentimes simple things are very hard to do, and it's ultimately a much less flexible and usable system, especially if you're coming in and you're new to it and you just, I want to put this here on the page. You often have to jump through a lot of hoops because our theming is so tied to this data.
And for us Drupal developers, this might sound like something we are used to, but for the non-Drupal developers, this is definitely something they are not used to, and this is definitely not something someone who is looking at a layout, a design for a site. They're not thinking what is the data structure. They are thinking what are the components, what is in common between these different things on this design. And we shouldn't be thinking about the data structure. It's other people who care about the data structure, not the themers.
Yeah, and there's many possible approaches, but for example, as a themer, it's as long as you can pull the data that you want into kind of the presentation layer, then what more do you need really? So it's more about kind of routing things differently and not just keeping everything only nodes or so on. And I guess probably we could not break the UI as part of this. Because we are talking about a CMS. That's, as we've been kind of hammering home, the CMS has a big difference in that it has much more of a UI. So, unless we fork Drupal or something, we still need to preserve that UI functionality, maybe even add more UI functionality based on the direction the project is going, to allow the site builder to do a lot of things without writing code. So the other idea is that in certain situations, we may find that it just doesn't make sense to keep it the way it is. So we could potentially have a trade-off where if we see, for example, that a themer has overridden some markup, or well, not really markup. Let's say in a node template they've messed around with the fields that are being printed and made it so that it doesn't match with the UI. So potentially in that case, we could actually disable that UI, kind of gray out the field UI to say, and then maybe have a message to say look, this has been overridden in the template. So, it's at least have a way of showing that it is kind of broken.
So as you can see, the component-based theme system is still in the very, very beginning. It would be nice to see as many of you giving your ideas on that. What could it be? How could it be done? But yeah, so it's time to discuss about these problems because of the ultimate idea of this presentation is to make the situation better in Drupal. And it would be nice to hear what are your opinions on how should we do these things. Does it make any sense what we are talking about? So probably one of the first things that we would like to discuss is the personas. So have any of you seen personas put to good use in any other projects? So if you have anything that you want to say, just raise your hand and someone will bring you a mic. Let's see if...
But yeah, we might not get responses to all the questions, so we understand. We won't cry.
Yeah. But if anyone has anything that you want to say to any of these questions, feel free to speak up.
Yeah, and you know, we also want this to evolve, so we're really just trying to kind of stoke the flames at this point, and I see Morten raising his hand, so
yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things that is a little bit what we're trying to go now is not focus on so awesome project that we have an income as the building at the end of the day. And you have the UI element that you're building on the conflict. It comes back to this iPad called UIs. And we're trying to give site builders tools that at the end of the day they might not even need if we end up with tools that 100%. Just take for example, why do you as a site builder want to change the size of the image? That doesn't really make sense. What you want to do as a site builder is you want to build on top of these UI elements with 50. So your TV should actually be where we define all these elements and then we give it to the site builders. One of the concepts I was working on with a lot of the idea having instead of having site builders choosing that size of it, choose a setback. Say here's only one having notes in a certain viewport, maybe not these variations of this little crystal. And again, these are our UI well, this way back, that was how we were thinking Google, go back and forth 1.7. So that's just the way you change these things. So I think that the next big, maybe I don't know the battle, the next big concept we need to think about is actually making the UI make sense for the end user and give us and actually the tool that we need to know these things. Which would mean though pretty much we will be space we pretty much we will need the space we then hold it quickly so it would be that I might be at least 3 different variations of how I know those and here it's active in my team now hold the UI elements and then it start controlling stuff. And what I wrote down here is I wrote basically showing the UI, the conceptual things, admin toolbars, all these things doesn't, at the end of the day, doesn't really make sense when you look at it. If we could do a complete split on the UIs and say, well, the UIs are nothing to do with it, here's a unified way with the UIs, all this stuff there. You don't walk in to redefine a view by doing the product project. You go and you find your view and you then go there. So we can build these tools there, and we don't end up having this conflict where the front end is going to be very, very expensive. At least it's an idea that I've been going around with in my head, figuring out how we can use it. But then component and the design was ends up actually being a tool for design. So even if we are like it, compared to what I see there at the end of the blue chain, but that will actually give us that, then we will be able to front end actually help us up to get this to our back end. We don't, and the side goes. It's kind of strange weird situation away from it. But I think that way for the US becomes a solution to it. But it's going to be a hard sell because we're basically saying the way we could figure stuff up until now has been wrong and we need to change that completely. And I think it can be done by
So I want to take up a little bit from the beginning because there is a very, 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 very valid point from Morten in the beginning, which was that some of the features that we have on the UI might not be very necessary. Because so right now what we have only the site builder user persona. So we don't really know what are our site builder actual use cases. What do our site builders actually do? If we would have more fine-grained user personas for the site builder, we could predict that maybe if we remove this feature, it would affect this one small user persona. under the site builder different site builder users. And it would be easier to make the decision because we would know better like how many people would this actually affect. But right now we think that it affects every site builder, which I believe is like let's say if we remove the logo from the theme settings, I don't think it would affect that many users of Drupal at all. And for that reason, it would be nice to see the user personas. And then we could, via thinking the user personas, we could make decisions that we can remove this and this and this, or we can prioritize this differently. Because it doesn't always have to be themers in general. We can prioritize one very, very important group of themers. So let's say the biggest group of themers is probably the people building sites for clients. And we should definitely be prioritizing that group of themers. We shouldn't be prioritizing the group of themers that are building the Drupal core itself, because there is not that many of them. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you bring back up the list of priorities for the various CMSs, just the slides of those? Because I'm missing Keynote in Greece, but I would be curious to see that list of priorities.
Okay. The Drupal one?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the reason I find this interesting is that this decision will be taken, let's say, at the top of the project, but that decision drives everything else. So some of the stuff the board would like to do essentially can't ever happen unless the team is up to solve it. Or at the very least, the word cycle is split down into different personas, so that, I mean, the team are on those, this is possibly a bit too blunt. You want to improve the law of any of the teamers, you're not really going to get a chance to figure out that. So, you know, as somebody who started out, most definitely a cycle or I've done a bit of development in Drupal, I can't see the team system getting to a point where anybody's perfectly happy with it. These other two roles, most of they are currently fine, are always prioritized. So one of the things that I've always wondered about is, can I always control all the markup, the CSS and JavaScript on my team? Well, the answer quite simply is no, if the team is at the bottom. That would simply never happen. That was a give up on that the whole way. However, if that was split up into different priorities, a bit more fine-grained and thin, perhaps a bit more realistic goal. So yeah, I'm just curious to know where that team is from, and is that up for discussion, or is Greece agreed so?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's the thing is, it's really hard to say, and I don't think it's necessarily the case that, you know, this is always what happens, but it's just more of like, this is the general, like, because it's, you know, it's an open source, it's open source software, right? So it tends to happen at least partially, like very organically, you know, so it's, you know, some, you know, for example, like Twig, as an example, like Twig was not an official initiative or something. It was a bunch of angry themers who got together and were like, death to PHP template. And, you know, we just all kind of got together and decided, like, let's try and, you know, move ourselves up a little bit. So it's really tough to say that, you know, every decision is like, oh, yep, these are the priorities, because, you know, we don't really know even who decides the priorities. And I think the main thing is that on the micro level, on like, let's say an individual patch getting in that maybe is changing some fundamental way that the system works, a lot of the time these types of things aren't discussed. It's just like, oh, this is good, let's put this in, you know?
The things like that, if they're not discussed, then it's inherent that this priority sits in the background and the lights that are working on the system, and it has to get into its will. Having come to recent thinking lately, but once upon a time, we very much of the thing that, yes, that's definitely how Google just work, which is prioritize the site. But, you know, the market change, the weather change, does Google still want to target the site builder, or has that market been lost to the likes of Wix or Squarespace or WordPress.com, that kind of stuff? So is there any point continually fighting that fight when you do it at the cost of making the themer experience worse? Because if tomorrow morning Google decides, you know what, the site builders, they don't matter, or these are at the bottom of the list, well then suddenly certain decisions change very, very quickly as how certain things are gone. And you know, I wish I were more about that discussion, and I don't, and I won't pretend that I will. But as long as people continue fighting that fight of going after the cyber race, I really don't think you'll get an optimal heat system, or you certainly will have a suboptimal heat system as long as they're at the top of the list. And that is a little bit worrying. The car market is a lost market, and then if fighting back up at the expense of a core user who are using it, I think it's potentially a dangerous situation.
Yeah, totally. Because it's, I think, unless someone, feel free to disagree, someone I'd be really interested to hear, but it doesn't seem like it's possible to say, oh, everyone is going to be happy. Like that's kind of why we called this talk after Goldilocks, because, Goldilocks finds the thing that's just right, but that's like just for her. So, it's really hard to say that we can make something that's going to be equally great for all these very, very different sets of users. And I think sooner we do need to compromise in some way, I think. So yeah, I totally agree with what you said, and that's a really good point. And I don't think one that I've quite thought about in that way. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we have two competing approaches to having an impact on the team there. So we have the site builder treating having configuration for team layer, and we have teamers that approach and on the other side. So that doesn't fit in our laws of separation of concerns. And you have those race conditions where both personas and throughout are trying to do the same thing, or breaking the stuff. So I think the next step we talk about, like killing each method, would be like killing a lot of the configuration stuff that we have in the cycle. It shouldn't be like the name shouldn't be configuration. It should be more like selecting stuff we want to use. We provide a tool set as a beamer for somebody that's site building. So the site builder could just select some stuff we want to use for the field or for the visual or node or whatever he's really concerned with changing or having display differently. So we have something that is consistent and also would give both personas a happy life. Because there will be one guy providing cool patterns, cool components, whatever, are good, with very well standpoints. And you would have a cycle that maybe we have this concern on building the site and and having tools that we use. So we should just stop
Yeah.
the micro configuration stuff that with the cycle the whole should be H3 and putting class and the next cycle is another class.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. So is it fair to say that the general idea is about, well, one of the general points that you made, I think, anyway, is that the site builder could simply be almost like swapping out different components via the UI, rather than, going really deep into the details of it. Yeah, that's a really interesting idea.
Already start breaking up the site builder. So the discussion has been so far, and it's certainly still one of the important uses, which is the smaller organisation or the Drupal farm, where you've got one person building the site, they're doing everything out. And actually WordPress is losing out there at the moment because there's the WordPress farms and you can't re-theme them. You can only get them set of themes, and then it always looks the same, you can't change stuff. And so the small site, individual site builder, who doesn't even get access to the server to put stuff in, is definitely one of the things that Drupal still powerful on. But I work with a lot bigger teams in organisations, and the site builder is power admin, and they're building panels and they're building views, and they're not site builders in that sense, but they're building sites for the specific use cases. We've already built the site for them, and we've given them these tools. They can make new parts of the site. They do this on a staging server,
and then it gets pushed through to the production development. But they're clicking together views and they're clicking together panels. And they're in big organisations, so if you try to do it, but they've got to have the power to be able to do it. And I don't know any other system that has that power where you can give it out and you don't always need to call up your development company to code you up this new feature because we've got the data from our entity form and now we want to show it in a slightly different way this time. And so, yeah, there's two types of it, personality and already.
I think that was a very interesting point, and it made me actually think about, like, because let's say right now, I wouldn't like to use the drag and drop functionality of Field UI. It would be very nice if I could just disable that feature from Drupal itself. Like if Field UI would have two different projects, there would be Field UI to create fields and one to drag and drop the display. And that's like Panels adds a lot of functionality like that in the Drupal core. We don't have it in core, but maybe we have it in the future, and then we have even more power on the site builders.
without on one hand having to know PHP and having to write modules, but we still can do stuff with your modules and what module maintainers made, but what maintainers haven't thought of. So Drupal has this extreme power, and it also so on one hand, in Drupal the site builder can actually do all this stuff, and on the other side, as a site builder, you also quite often have to buy with the builders and the designers who want to make something pretty that actually contradicts the functionality. So if you kind of narrow the site builder by the theme on one hand, who has control over stuff, and only making for selecting and fitting, then you lose a lot of power and a lot of the ability to build sites that can be built by people that work with organizations. And just just blocking the site builder by the theme and backend and just leaving them very narrow options will actually decrease the Drupal ecosystem.
So I have a question back to you, so maybe you can keep the mic. So I want to ask a question, let's say about the logo. So the logo configuration is right now in the base system of Drupal. Would you believe that it would affect the site builder user role at all if the logo wouldn't be configurable by the Drupal base system, but instead there would be a module that is called configure logo?
I think the theme section is actually one of the things where Drupal isn't as viewable as it is in other things. So the fact that you can't translate the logo, basically the logo is a bit like the user picture was, something that was set by core and you couldn't really use it like other fields or other images. So if the logo image could just be a field that is like other fields, I think that would be the solution.
Yeah.
And then, yes, there's also moments when the site builder, I want to be able to, people should be able to swap the logo fast. There are situations where the logo of an organization changes, and I don't want to be employed in email that those changes succeed.
Yeah, just a quick point on that. Like it's kind of just coming back quickly to the component idea is like something like the logo. Perhaps if we implement it as a component, we can still maintain that flexibility. Like you said, maybe it's just a field, and then that data comes through the component into the theme. So you still have the ability to modify that data. But yeah, the themer has kind of the flexibility to present it perhaps a bit differently.
So how do you see the content manager being implemented performance?
So we didn't include it because we really wanted to focus on what users interact closely with the theme system, and generally like the content manager, the content editor, mostly what they do is kind of add really weird markup, and then the themer has to kind of deal with that.
Like, let's say there is the body field, which is the filled with markup. It doesn't use theme system for anything. It uses base system to filter the HTML, but it doesn't use theme system for anything. Also, not many of the core functionalities that Drupal core itself provides allow the content authors to modify markup. Let's say there is modules such as panels, which allows content authors to modify their layouts and the look and feel of the page. But that's not in Drupal core, and it doesn't use theme system that much to build that kind of functionality.
Yeah, and you could argue that that leans a little bit more towards a site builder, right? At least in certain cases. Oh, Martin.
Yeah.
Mike.
So I'm grabbing the whole site builder before, which is very interesting. So my point, like showing you what I want to do, is we know that if you look at these, like one of the things that actually said, what you actually do for it goes as your product for us. It makes us able, as a normal human being, create very, very abstract data that you put out to the site. And that's all good. That's what we do. You know what I mean? Put these things in, we like push it out in a certain way, say all these fields. At the end of the day, they didn't want to present it on the page. And this is the point where we need to, if our teams provide these elements, that would kind of need it way more. That needs to provide more data for it. So let's say I want to present this title in a certain way. My team is then developing components that have to evolve this being, you have these kind of variations of how we can shoot it. Now we're actually giving the site builder way more power than we have before, and they're going to be building within the design system that the team is providing. And it's kind of, I think that's, it's not about pushing the site builders further down. It's actually giving the site builders more free at the, I think that at the end of the day, what you want to have, you have to sign up on the server and you want to change something, you want to change basically these different elements that we have provided as a team. So it's actually making, it should have our teams to kind of provide these design components instead of just being a bunch of CSS files. And it will require us as teams to build way bigger systems where we kind of need to go to the next step. We actually need to implement having that or CSS or something like that inside of where to build this stuff. And it will require way more work from us as teams, but it will also provide, when I mentioned this idea the first time in Barcelona, when dudes were standing right next to me and go like, wait a minute, I kind of want that. I don't want to be building these things. So I guess that the thing is that I don't think the rest of the community understands that they need this. I think we understand that we basically, as I said yesterday in my session, we're not going to ask for it, we're going to take it, we're going to do it, and we're going to do it now. We were told 4 years ago we could not put a new theme system into core. We were also told we could not put a new theme into core, not put 2 new themes into core. We began the theme into core in Barcelona right before RC1 because suddenly there was an understanding from the rest of the community that, oh, this actually makes sense. 2 years before that, when I was speaking, like, let's put in a completely clean theme. You're like, no, we don't need that. You can just override it. You know that's wrong. Some of these things take a long time to think and a long time to understand. So it's kind of, that's why I know it's the whole thing saying I want to tell you why. Let's put it out as a tweet just to see what kind of reaction you've got to get up to. It's first we need to conceptualize. We got all that, what we want to then show the rest of the community why this is a good idea. And we didn't get the new theme system because people often be something better with PHP template. You got a new theme system because, oh shit, PHP templates things to do.
We don't have much time left, so yeah. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, 10 minutes is all. No, I had another thought that really concerned me for a while. Like I said before, the separation of concerns between site builder and themer. I think that there's a similar thing what we have between people doing backend development and handing stuff over the data related to the ecosystem. So we have those render arrays that were a good idea, and still I don't know. The thing is, it's
give the data to, hand it over to somebody or something that does the theming. And I think there are, we have to rethink that. In one end, we have the idea of decoupling or asset decoupling, and other systems, want to consume the data. But also in this area where we usually right now every day, we still are not at a point where we can really use the data in a flexible way, because we're bound to this area that defines, okay, this is the theme something, this is theme links inside of something.
I have a suggestion for that. That's so basically what you could do in the tools that we have right now is to make your themers write the hook theme implementations, because hook theme implementation basically defines the structure of the variables being put into a template. So that helps definitely in that, but it's not enough. I mean, we need to have better tools than that, and especially in the world of contributed projects, it doesn't work at all.
Well, and just to add a small point on that too, like one of the things potentially that we could do in later versions of Drupal 8 is essentially deprecate hook theme and move it into like a YAML file. So then that way what Lauri is saying would be more accessible and you don't need to know PHP. Hello?
I was thinking of the personas and the priorities, and I don't have much experience with WordPress, but what I found is that many of the popular themes, like what you were saying, Themer is the top priority, and many of those themes actually have, as it was Martin said, like they build the UI for actually like explicitly the theme that you're working with. So we are only having the UI components that are used in the theme, but they are actually rebuilding and recreating many times what we kind of have standardized on. So I do believe that it's better to learn how to use some components and get used to how data management, content management, and chunks instead of blobs and everything is dealt with within the UI, and then just have the theme system fit the data that they need. So we don't mix concerns a little bit, because otherwise we're actually having to rethink or just reuse always the same theme that has the component that you like. It's like panels came with the same theme together. So I like the way it goes that all of a sudden it changes the priorities. If you install that theme in WordPress, you're actually installing it because it's a site building tool that you're getting. So all of a sudden what you saw in personas changes because you just buy for $10 that theme, and all of a sudden it's a site building tool. And the same happens with Drupal. When your client, you have a certain way of building sites, and when your client is something like be a content manager, it's okay to create the UI. You can create the UI by design, and the theme system allows you to just pick a few data that you want and make it very simple, including templates. And again, you just change the priority yourself. So I'm not sure those priorities are kind of set in stone as the systems are now. Like, it really depends on the way that people are using it. And another thing about that is that...
Can I say something for that? So about breaking the UI, maybe you can make that trade-off when you're building a site, but for contributed project, it's not something that they can really do. You can just, a contributed project that a lot of people use can just break a major functionality part of Drupal core.
Yeah, I was thinking more as an end product when you're building a site.
But that's again, like, how do we, it's just one user persona that we have right now. If it would be more fine-grained, I could say that this specific small user persona would break.
Yeah, I agree. So I just want to take a second and allow people that want to escape, and thank you for coming, because we're kind of at our time. So we can keep talking for a bit if you want to. You're more than welcome to stay, but if you want to escape, please feel free to do so, and thank you for coming.
We are not offended by that.
Yeah, we're not offended.
The other thing I would say is that I think these conferences, we are a little bit biased towards teaming and developers when it comes to the opinions. And excited. And it's also part of the reason that we also get Drupal sites afterwards in the bigger agencies and bigger places, because some small businesses start with that, and when they grow, they have more space to need, but they were able to work for many years with that. So I don't think we hear their experience, even though there were two opinions on site building, but we're usually biased towards like the more hardcore programmer and developer.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think that the personas, ideally, the personas are something that could help us. Not necessarily break free of that may be too strong a word, but at least think of reframing and think of the different perspectives while we're trying to have these discussions and make these decisions. So yeah, we're definitely biased, and I don't know, I think that's okay.
But just a context that both of us are also backend developers, and we have different kind of background than many of the other.
Yeah, we're just back-end developers who love themers.
Yes.
I've just been realizing that we don't have these slides you had, where it's like who's on the top and who's the first-class citizen, and maybe we need to actually find a way of visualizing it differently on how can we build sites where the site building and the theming is actually taking place on a similar level. So where, yes, when I'm building a site, can get components that are already been implemented, not as a fixed thing that comes and is done for me, but as something that as site builders and themers we can work side by side. Instead of coming into a situation where first one comes and then the other one comes and comes last has the biggest power over what's happening. I think if we can visualize it on this level side by side, we might get to a better answer.
Yeah, totally. And I think, in my mind anyway, that comes back to the point of once we decouple our data structures from our presentation, then it could actually, as you're saying and as Morten was saying earlier, it can actually help both site builders and themers, and honestly, potentially back-end developers too, because one thing that I notice a lot, like day to day, is that a lot of the time the back-end developer doesn't really want to define the markup in the first place. So, you know, it's often like, okay, now as the back-end developer, I need to go like find the themer and be like, okay, what markup do you want? And like that's kind of backwards, right?
I hate theming forms.
Yes, and
I'm a back-end developer, I end up having to do it.
so yeah, we have a comment that, yeah, he's back-end developer and he hates theming forms. And yes, so that forms are horrible to theme, even for back-end developers.
So I'm just going to yell it out. It sounds like you kind of on the same level of what we want to do. I think the next step, we know we want to define components of them, so we give that to our site builders. So the site builders will go inside. Our backend developers don't have to think about these things because they install all these epic theme, and now they have all these thingies defined in their site. How do we get that next step? How do we make it possible? Because all these discussions are all good and happy and dandy, but it's not before the majority of our community can download a module or download a theme where all of these things are actually happening. So we kind of need to figure out a way how to build this into either a module or, forking the shit out of Drupal 8 and be like, here's a new version, here's a new idea how you can build this, and so people can see this in actual reality. Because if we're talking about components, and a lot of people don't even understand what we're talking about. And it's like it needs to be visual for people. So the site builders don't go into panic mode like, oh no, why are they going to take away all my tools? Like, no, here's your new better tools. So how do we do that?
So if I can try and sum that up, we need a proof of concept. We need like a prototype. So yeah, if we feel like we have sort of an idea of where we go, or where we're going rather, maybe we can start to build that tomorrow. So come to the sprint and we'll see what we can make happen.
Yeah, and also like often the question is like what is Drupal actually? Because for some people it's like site builders are on top. When you look at Drupal, and especially Drupal 8 has Composer and it's moving towards the PHP community. So actually, a the backend developers are that on top is like a site builder, someone who maybe knows a little bit of PHP, can dig around, but they're like down. But then we're talking about components, we're moving the achievers all the way up. And so I really feel people moving towards like being something like a very tiny thing, and then we can kind of have like distributions, and distributions can be like we can have a distribution for site builders, but we can also have like we can have like a distribution like something WordPress is doing, like with the Calypso thing, and you can kind of click around. Yeah, like you say, like forms might be great for backend developers, but they're also for achievers. And so, yeah, the priorities in Drupal are just floating, like, and that's the main problem. So, the main question that should be answered is like, who are we focusing on? Who is our main target? Because I don't think that we can be a tool for all of those three. We can never make someone happy. So we should be building like micro tools. And then something like that.
Thanks for the comment. It's a very interesting comment because I talked about this in January with Daniel Wiener. Daniel Wiener is the #1 contributor to Drupal core, and he opened an issue to the issue queue with the title, "What is Drupal? What is the purpose of Drupal? Like what are we? Please define." Because if we can't make any decisions because we don't know what we are. And no one has commented that issue yet. I think it has like 150 followers or something, but no one has commented on the issue because I guess everyone in the community are just too scared of that topic because I don't know if we can even define what we are.
Yeah, so I strongly agree on that. You can build a component system, but no backend developer might need a component system. And if you're making a website where you don't need all the flexibility of panels, then why would you have a core that can do all that stuff? So you have all that goal, but you're not using it. So yeah, I hope that we can figure out what is Drupal.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and that's a really good summary, I think, of some of the questions that we brought up with, personas, priorities. Like trying to cut to the core. How are we on time, by the way? Do we like?
It's now like 24, so I think that's the last one.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah, it's again.
Oh, I think it's off.
So yeah, I think that's valid thoughts. There's also questions, but coming back to some more concrete, that you think about how can we implement that, like more component-based thinking. I think we have to kind of overcome what we currently have now, those direct things that kind of containing other things. Because a headline is a not a component. It's an element. It's something that could be a component. And also, maybe a node is not really a component. So we need something where we have a different entry point or a concept thing where we can get the data and hand it over to the team. Because what we're doing at the moment is putting a field group, and in the field group we're putting some fields and we're putting some classes of the field group or something like that, or we're making a new theme or using anything to combine some stuff to something that is a component, and that's something that Drupal is, we have workarounds for that. And so I think this is the first step on making something happen that is thinking on a component basis. It's not easy, I think, or looking at how we do things now. It's not easy, but I think that's the solution.
Yeah, I think, that's a good point. And I think the only thing I would add to that is I think we should keep our minds open to the idea that components are not necessarily one size. We can nest components, we can have micro components and macro components, and maybe it's just components all the way down. So yeah, I think that's it. Thanks everyone for coming.
Thanks.